Moat on the volley, and the corner. What a start for West Bromwich Albion. Unbelievable! West Bromwich Albion have ruined his big day.
Line again, and it's Adam Wingy who gets the final touch, and West Bromwich Albion now have a 2-goal cushion.
The Baggies Podcast, giving you the latest news, views and opinions on all things Albion. Hello and welcome back to the Baggies Podcast, where of course we're giving you all the latest news, views and opinions on all things Albion. We're back again today. It's episode 75. It's a big number for the Baggies Podcast, heading into 75 episodes. We're nearly at 100. But today it's a match reaction episode to Saturday's 3-0 victory against Peterborough United. We'll be discussing all the details from that clash and, of course, a much-needed 3 points for Albion. But before we get into it, make sure you subscribe on your podcast platform or YouTube. If you're watching on there, you're watching the video version. And make sure you drop us a nice little review or comment if you've enjoyed the episode. But today, we've borrowed another member of the WBA Report Podcast. Of course, we've had Ronan from the WBA Report Podcast on before, but today it's Matt. Matt, how are you doing, mate? Welcome to the show.
No, thank you for having me on, mate. I'm not bad. I'm a bit happier after yesterday, of course. It's better than not winning and losing, isn't it? So, yeah, not too bad, thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's like an away trip, isn't it? Not, obviously, the reverse fixture for when you came on our podcast, and I would remind you about the quiz, but because you've been so nice and having me on, I'm just going to let that one be.
Yeah, I feel like, if the Baggies Podcast fans find out about that quiz, I think, we may see a real sharp decline in listeners. But so we'll keep the quiz quiet for now. But Matt, obviously, you do your own podcast with the guys from WBA Report. How's that going? How are things with that? Because you only started at the start of this season, didn't you?
Yeah, I think we maybe exceeded expectations of what we could do. I mean, I don't think any of us, the three of us, me, Ronan or Kieran, have actually ran a podcast before. I dipped my toes in it with a cricket one, and yeah, I've enjoyed it. It's nice to actually have a platform to go and spout off your opinions as opposed to just going on Twitter ranting, upsetting a few people. It feels nice to have like a professional platform to go and sort of spread your word, I guess. And yeah, we've done fairly well. I mean, I don't think we're at the standard of yours yet or other Albion podcasts, but
no, don't worry. You definitely are. Don't worry. This is the most unprofessional Albion podcast you could probably turn up to be honest, Matt.
I'm sure that's what the listeners love, though, mate. So, yeah, well, it's enjoyable, and hopefully it benefits our careers or our hopes and aspirations for in a professional sense. So, no, we're really enjoying it, and hopefully it becomes a bit more enjoyable if Albion can put a few wins together.
Yeah, absolutely. And what sort of content can we find in the podcast? Obviously it's all about Albion, but what sort of stuff do you chat about on there?
Yeah, there's a mix, to be fair. I mentioned the quiz, which was a really enjoyable episode from my point of view. I'd like to say from your point of view. It
was a very good episode. Yeah, it was nice to be a part of, and Ronan did a fantastic job on the quiz, I think.
He did, didn't he? Yeah. So if you haven't listened to that, I mean, just for pure enjoyment, forget about views or whatnot. Go and have a listen and play along, because it was really good fun. Yeah, we like to mix it up a bit. Like you said, we're not taking things a bit too serious, but we like to get into a bit of a debate and engage with listeners, that sort of thing. And when we get the chance to do something like a quiz, or we named our best team of the 21st century quite a while ago, it's something we'll definitely look to keep doing more of, trying to get a few more guests on. So again, just trying to mix it up a bit, engaging for the listeners, and hopefully we can crack on with where we've sort of started.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, listeners, if you want to go and check out the WBA Report podcast, there'll be some links in the description. So go and have a listen. When's your next episode going to be out, Matt?
Yes, I believe it'll be after the Preston game on Wednesday.
Okay, very good. So yeah, after the Preston game on Wednesday, of course, there's another episode that came out just last week, I think, or earlier this week. You can go and check that out. Links in the description. So yeah, go and show the guys some love on the podcast, and go and drop them a nice review whilst you're at it. But Matt, we're here to chat about West Bromwich Albion Peterborough 3-0. Nice win in the end, taking them within 4 points of the automatic promotion spaces. How would you sum up that game, Matt? How did you feel it went, from an overall perspective?
I think I'll probably sum it up as you said, from So if I'm looking at it and thinking as a whole, how do I think the game went? I'll probably say it was okay, wasn't it? You'd say we were the better team. Peterborough were poor, and you can see why they are why they're in 23rd, 22nd, and in trouble of making an instant return to League One. But from an Albion perspective, yeah, we were probably the better team, dominated large parts of the game, but I wouldn't say we were incredible. That's why I'm refraining to say, we were okay. And I'm glad, obviously, we got the goals in the end, because it was getting a bit of a slog, wasn't it, towards the latter stages of the second half before we got that opening goal. But you'd probably say it was deserved, and it was just an okay performance. And I think the main thing was, we mentioned it on our podcast, everyone associated with the club needed a result. I mean, of course, they were paying our respects to Jeff Astle and his family 20 years on since he passed away, unfortunately. So it was important in that sense, but also, of course, getting a result for the manager and the players and the crowd. So, yeah, a much needed victory for sure.
Yeah, if we touch on the Jeff Astle tributes, it was really lovely to see. Obviously, the speech at half time, the clips before the game, and obviously the T-shirts as well. I just personally thought it was really nice to see us, really play up to an occasion in the end, get a victory, because obviously we've had the Cyril Regis celebration against Southampton. I think we lost that game, and then the Leicester game, of course, the Astle Day with the big letters in the crowd and stuff. And it was really nice to just see us get a victory for Jeff Astle and his family, and to sort of commemorate his life and career at West Brom. Yeah, very much so. I think it's only right that. Well, looking back at those two games, especially that Southampton one, I thought was a disgrace. Summed up the season as a whole. I really don't think the players put anything into that game really. For what I've both days were absolutely phenomenal. Of course, the Brummie Road with the Astle King, that was what an image, what a sight. That is one of the best I think I'll ever see at the Albion. And with the scarves again, the Brummie Road, what a picture that was on celebrating Cyril Regis's life. But unfortunately, they didn't live up to both individuals on that day. So as you say, it was glad to at least pay our respects and do it with a win. And that's one thing Ishmael said after the game, is that's for Jeff Astle, and it's just a nice feeling to go and win after paying our respects to him. Yeah, absolutely. It's just lovely to see us finally play up, as you said, to that occasion and get the 3 points. Of course, it was a debut at home for a certain Daryl DK, our new signing. Obviously, nice to see him in Albion colours. I think, it was positive signs overall. I think obviously not positive that he came off injured after 53 minutes. I think that was a little bit of a worry. There's a few chances for him potentially. I think he could have probably from all of those chances could have got one at least. How do you feel his home debut went, Matt? Are you feeling positive looking? Well, obviously not that he's injured, but obviously feeling positive looking at hopefully his Albion career so far. I mean, I was at Loftus Road last week, and he was probably our best player on the pitch that day, even though he only played half an hour. And Saturday too, he should have probably had at least one, as you say. I think that chance where the ball fell to him in the penalty area, hits it straight at the goalkeeper. I suppose if it's Jordan Hugill, we're probably slating him for that. But, of course, DK's played, less than 90 minutes since October last week and Saturday. So, I mean, he disappointed not to have scored, but he put himself up, about mobile, dominant, bullied Peterborough defenders. So I'm still very much looking forward to seeing more of him. Just a shame he couldn't get off the mark on his home debut. Yeah, and it was nice to see an Albion striker really get into those areas so frequently. I think we can speak from seeing Albion play this season. We've not had a striker have that many chances in a game, all fall to the same person. I think having a striker in those areas. The one that was closest to me was where he leapt between two defenders and picked up a header. I think I did hear some cries behind me of get Hugill on, to be honest, after he missed the chance at his feet, I think. But overall, it was really positive to see him get off the mark, not off the mark, but get into the Albion shirt in front of the Hawthorns crowd, and just start to sort of give Albion fans a bit of a feeler for what you can kind of expect for him. Obviously, he did come off injured after 53 minutes. Difficult to see from Albion fans. I mean, it's the most Albion thing ever, really, to place almost all your eggs in one basket on a striker and for him to come off injured. But from what we understand, I think he'll only miss for now, unless the scan on Monday goes pear-shaped. He'll only miss Preston and Millwall. So, Matt, hopefully we'll see him back in an Albion shirt before long, because, boy, do we really, really need him to help us out.
Oh, yeah, very much so. I mean, if this injury was a season-ending one, he could almost write off our season. I think it might be fair to say. Thankfully, I think you're right, and he won't be out for too long. Well, basically, is he the American Daniel Sturridge? We'll wait and see. But I don't think he can be as bad as that January signing. Sorry, but yeah, it was a blow, and just hope it's not too bad. I think you're right though. Seeing an Albion striker get in those spaces and get on the end of crosses was really encouraging. Put it this way, I couldn't have seen Hugo getting on the end of some of those crosses at all. So at least DK is getting his head on it and coming close. Yeah, a few of them thought, oh wow, he's actually got onto the end of that, and he's got it well. So it's definitely encouraging. I think we've got more of a pinpoint to our attack now to actually aim crosses for in the box, as opposed to what your Robinson, Grant, and Diangana aren't going to get on the end of balls into the box, are they? And less about Hugo, the better. That's really encouraging. Just have that focal point, and hopefully, the more he adapts, sort of more he'll score goals, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was another really Albion thing that happened was, almost as soon as he went off, we started scoring goals, which was, the most maddest thing ever. Obviously Dean Garner came on for him, and in my opinion, that's the best we've seen from him so far this season. And it, thankfully, got a goal to show for it. Hopefully, a really confidence boosting performance from Dean Garner. And it's so nice to see all the Albion players going over congratulating him. It, obviously meant a lot to Dean Garner and the rest of the team to see him get that goal. What did you make of his substitute appearance against Peterborough, Matt?
Yeah, I was absolutely delighted for him. As you say, it's probably the best we've seen him this season. And with Grady, he's probably one of the only players really in this squad that I have really, really fond memories of. Maybe it's just that the season we went up, some of the things he did, as we all know, were just mesmerising. And I'll never forget that. And when you see the sort of talent, I think it just stays with you. And I'll always appreciate him for that. And it's a shame to have really seen his confidence drop. Of course, didn't get much game time in the Premier League last season, and the Sam Allardyce and injury sort of played a part in that. And he hasn't set the world alight this year, but I just think he needs a bit of a confidence booster, and then he can go and set the world alight. And yesterday he was almost back to his old self, taking players on, getting in between defenders in these little tight spaces, and he really made the difference. And he was man of the match in my opinion. It's interesting that it came after how do you say, a bit of criticism from the manager. And if that played a part, then whatever your opinions are on Ishmael, you've got to say fair play, because it looked like it worked. But yeah, from a personal point of view, I'm really, really happy to see Diangana perform. Great to see all the players go over. I really hope his confidence improves and he can kick on, because as I say, he's probably my favourite player in this team, and he always will be at this rate.
Yeah, it's just so lovely to see him get well, I suppose off the mark, but he scored against Middlesbrough. But that was the performance you really wanted to see from him. I think I put a little thread out on Twitter about how he needed to be a bit wider, and his that Ishmael needs to play him a bit wider, and we kind of saw that for his goal. Really, he kind of hugged the touchline and came in and kind of stretched the defence, and that's what you want from him. You want to see him kind of tugging fullbacks out of their position, and you want to see him kind of stretching them and taking them on and isolating his fullback. And I think his first touches in the game were actually picking the ball up out wide and sort of driving into the box. And I think we're unfortunate not to get a chance out of that. But it's just really nice, as you said, Matt, to see him to see the old Grady really for 30, 40 minutes or so. It's just really nice to see that, and hopefully he can kick on. A man that I would like to also point a bit of a man of the match statement towards it is our captain for this particular game, Jake Livermore. I thought that for all the stick that I think he gets off Albion fans, I thought he put in a really nice battling performance from in the midfield. I think in the first half, as you said there, Matt, it was quite slow, quite the same as what we've seen recently. But I thought Livermore kept the intensity up, especially obviously off the ball. He's always in it, but keeping the intensity up in that middle of the park against three Peterborough midfielders who were obviously working hard for fighting for their lives really in the Championship. What did you make of Livermore's performance yesterday?
I mean, I'm not the biggest Livermore fan, and I'm not sure I ever will be. And I think that's probably understandable. A lot of Albion fans feel the same. But again, yesterday, you've got to hold your hands up and say, I think he was one of our better performers for sure. He's actually in the first half, and when we were looking to put a few passes together and the movement perhaps wasn't quite there, and we lacked a bit of a spark occasionally. He wanted to get on the ball and wanted to make that pass. And I think that's something that you can't always say for Livermore. But yesterday, he looked up for it and he wanted to control the game. So it was really encouraging to see. And you're not, just because you might not be the biggest fan of a certain player or whatnot, you can't just be biased and just disregard him, because I think he played really well yesterday. So hopefully we can see more of the same. You'd imagine he'll keep his place in spite of Mowitt's return next week.
I think it's definitely nice to see, and I think nice to see lots of Albion fans giving him the praise. I think for that performance that he deserves, because obviously we've seen that he gets a lot of stick really from Albion fans, and I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan of him, but I'll always say this for him, that he's always given 100% and he's always trying his best, and that's all you can really ask for, I suppose. He's not the most gifted footballer. He's never going to spray those 50-yard passes for you. He's never going to pick the lock in a defence and thread through passes, but at least he's working hard, and he's giving all for the cause. And one thing I wanted to mention, Matt, was the huddle after the game. I don't know if you saw, but there was the team huddle after the game. I thought that was a strange thing for Albion. I don't think I've seen us do one of them before, apart from maybe Blackpool last season. I think Allardyce made everybody do that, which was just really odd in the end, because it's just so strange. I mean, what did you make of that? Because it's not a familiar sight, as I said, and that Blackpool game was a bit of a weird one as well.
Yeah, well, thinking about it now, I mean, this wasn't something I thought I mentioned when I came onto the episode, but the game after that Blackpool match was actually when we beat Wolves, wasn't it? I mean, if it has the similar sort of effects against Preston, then I won't really be complaining. So, it was a weird one, wasn't it, though? And I'm not really sure what to make of it. I mean, I think the most interesting thing perhaps was that Val wasn't involved. I mean, for the first time this season, I actually left early just to make sure, as soon as Diangana's goal went in, we make sure we got the train, because there were a few disruptions there. So typical, the first time I actually leave early this season, we missed something. It was interesting though, and I mean, what was said, I guess, doesn't it? Hopefully it's a positive thing. You'd like to think that sort of Val and the players have a decent enough connection, and they respect him, and that respect is channeled back. But hopefully it's a positive thing. And as I said, if we can get a result like we did against Wolves last year in the Preston game, then I suppose we won't really be complaining, will we?
No, we certainly won't. And it probably won't be as sweet, I suppose, if it was as the victory against Wolves. Obviously, that team talk did kind of work, really. I suppose that was more of a put that behind you, forget that you've even played Blackpool this week, and go and beat the Dingles next week. So hopefully that brings a positive run really from Albion, because they've got some big fixtures coming up. Obviously, we'll chat about Preston in a little bit, but the relationship between Val and his players, has been questioned by a lot of the fans over the past few weeks. But I saw a bit of a lift from Albion when I think it was Robinson and Malumbi came on. I've seen quite a few people. I think I at first thought it was a bit of a change of system. I mean, it was probably debatable as to whether it was, but there was the two changes, and I felt a bit of a lift in the ground. Maybe it's because half the fan base, and including probably myself, thought that Val had gone to a 4 at the back, but there was a bit of a lift from that point onwards, and obviously the goal came shortly after, and it was nice to see a bit of positivity for those last 15 minutes, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I was in the same boat, and there were a few sort of sarcastic cheers perhaps coming from the crowd, and it did look initially like he perhaps changed the system. On second glance, though, I did think you'd see Townsend tuck into left side of defence, and then Reach moves to wing back. So it probably wasn't, was it? And we can't get too excited, because there's one thing you would criticise Val for, it's being rather inflexible from a tactical perspective. But you know what, he made the changes and they paid off, so you can't really knock him for that. And Diangana a substitute, it was an enforced one. Robinson a substitute. They made the difference. So again, you hold your hands up and say fair play to Ishmael. It definitely made the difference with the substitutes. It would have been nice to see a change of system. They definitely provided a lift. You're right there.
Yeah, I think I thought it was a change of system initially, and I thought, oh, Townsend's gone to left back, and you heard the applause, you heard the laughter almost from Albion fans thinking he's finally done it. But it went, I think, for about 2 minutes it was that, and then you kind of realised, he's just done the same thing, just in a different order really, by bringing Malumbi on first for Clark. But yeah, it's nice to see. I think this must be, I did a little video in the week about analysing Ishmael and his sort of influence over Albion, and one of the stats I sort of counted up was before this game he'd made 76 subs and only one had provided a goal for him. So yeah, it's nice to see that he's had that impact really, and had a goal scorer and a couple of assists from Robinson off the bench, because it's fair to say all credit to Ishmael there, because those two subs, they really did change the game and they really did make things better for Albion, and they provided that lift. And obviously scoring a scrappy goal from a set piece was probably the least likely way that the most likely way we were going to do it, because Furlong almost kicking the ball at Kipre to put it in the goal in the end. But it led to gaps in Peterborough's defence, and that's all you need really. You need to start quickly and you need to get the goal, and then obviously teams like that, they have to come out and play, and they have to come out and try and get a result against you. But that lift was nice to see, and Matt, obviously 3 goals in the last 15 minutes. It was nice to see the floodgates really open for Albion and obviously score those goals that we've really missed this season.
Yeah, very much so, especially with our goal scoring record, as you allude to there. It was nice just to see a few actually hit the back of the net. The first goal was a scrappy one and it really didn't excite me. But in all fairness, was it always going to be a scrappy one? You could say Peterborough came with a game plan, put a lot of men in their own penalty box, and almost came, well, I suppose you would say they came close to getting a draw, I guess. But it was a scrappy one. In fact, the woman who actually sits in front of me won about 350 quid off that Kipre goal. Yes, fair play to her. Big shout out. She actually had no idea, because the stadium announcer claimed it's Furlong goal, didn't he?
Yeah.
I was checking my phone and I went, oh, got that to show her. It's actually gone through as Kipre on there, so it was a bit of a suspense waiting to see who actually scored the goal. And you're right, it was a Kipre goal, so she got her money, and all was good. But yeah, it was really nice to see a few goals go in, especially as we mentioned before for Diangana. Grant took his goal really well. He's double figures now for the season, I believe, isn't he? So hopefully this is sort of a sign of things to come, especially with DK's arrival, because we definitely need those goals, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the woman in front of you must be, a psychic, because to put a bet on Kipre to score is mind blowing in itself. But for it to come off and 300 quid, did you say, in the bag? I mean, that is some result for her. I mean, if she's listening, I doubt she is, but that is an absolutely astonishing bet. My bet myself didn't work. I bet on DK to score, and obviously very close to, but yeah, silly me. That won't be happening again. That's the first bet I've put on Albion this season, and it certainly won't be happening again, to be honest. But Kipre has won the lady in front of you quite a lot of money, so he should be very proud of himself for doing that, and proud of himself for starting off an onslaught of goals really from Albion, taking those 3 chances. And where does that leave us now? That leaves us, within 4 points of the automatic spots. Bournemouth lost, of course, against Hull City, despite having, loads of the ball in that game. All of a sudden, it doesn't look that bad in the end now, Matt, does it?
No, it doesn't. And the way I look at it is Wednesday could be a really important night for Albion in the context of the season. Of course, I think there's a few games on Tuesday. I'm not sure who's playing, but I know Middlesbrough and Blackburn are playing on Monday night. So, of course, you'd like a result to go our way there. You could make a point of a draw being the better result, but I think you'd say you wouldn't. A Middlesbrough win wouldn't be too bad, would it? If it again prevents Blackburn from picking up more points there. So if results go our way, and on Wednesday night we move to within 1 point, then we're well and truly back in the race, aren't we? And all of a sudden it's gone from doom and gloom to perhaps a bit more optimism. So yeah, I do think Wednesday could be huge, and it's all everyone's to play for, isn't it? If you're 1 point out or sort of within 1 point of the top two, and that's QPR, Blackburn, Albion, Bournemouth. So, it's a nice little race that's developing. So one thing I would say though, Scott Parker, why aren't you playing Morgan Rogers? Because you're giving him about 7 minutes to come on every game. Yes, I'm a bit biased, but you need to play him because you're not picking up good results. And he scored his first touch at Luton last week. So it's a bit of a message. I'm pretty sure Scott Parker's not listening, but on the off chance he might be, I mean, who knows? He might be doing a bit of opposition scouting. But yeah, you need to give him a game from the start. So yeah.
Yeah, for context for our listeners, Matt, you've obviously, you're friends with Morgan Rogers, and yeah, I've just quickly knocked up his stats there, and he's played 15 games overall for Bournemouth, but he's only played 230 minutes. Obviously scored that goal against Luton. Well, we don't want to encourage Scott Parker to give him more game time, because obviously we know what he can do, and we know that he'll probably score against Albion if he plays the full 90 against us. But yeah, we don't want to encourage that. So Scott Parker, if you are listening, just tune out for now. Don't get any ideas. But obviously Morgan Rogers, we know what he can do, and hopefully he doesn't do it against Albion for that rearranged fixture, because that would be harrowing for Albion, to be honest. But Matt, if we move on to Preston, it's as you said, a huge game, because he could close that gap down to 1 point, and Sam Johnson and Alex Mowat obviously coming back into the side. Do you think they come straight back in, or do you think they wait their turn for the players that have performed, I suppose, well in that game in their positions?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Really, I mean, you mentioned on our podcast when you came on, Johnston across the last 18 months, I guess, has been one of our better performers, if not our best performer. He's player of the year, weren't he? Really, in the Premier League, it was him or Pereira. And obviously he's a big figure at the club, and he's a well-respected one. He's an England international playing for Albion in the Championship. I think nothing more has to be said than that. However, there are mitigating circumstances, aren't there? So it looks like he's not signing a contract. I mean, I suppose it could change if we get to the Premier League. I've got no idea about Sam's intentions there. And you'd probably say David Button hasn't really put a foot wrong, wouldn't you really? So, I mean, I'm not totally convinced and think, oh yeah, Button's on the level of Johnson, because let's be honest, he's not, is he? I suppose you want a Johnston playing at his best for the next 6 months to try and get us up, don't you? But then again, he has made mistakes. I think of that Derby game and a few other occasions where he's rushed off his line, and attackers have got the better of him. So it's a really interesting one, because there's always a case to say don't change a winning team. But do you bring in your number one goalie? Probably wouldn't you? But it's one I think you can definitely make an argument for. Mowat, again, I mean, he had that honeymoon period, a bit like Ishmael. He looked really good, the first weeks being at the club, and you couldn't really make a case of dropping him then. I wasn't impressed with his red card against Cardiff. Thought that was really, really, really poor, and let his team down there. I mean, who started? It was Reach, wasn't it? Who started in midfield? And I thought Reach had a decent enough game, didn't he? I don't think he played poorly. I think he's probably gone under the radar a bit there. He definitely didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. Would I bring Mowat back in? I mean, Malumbi comes on and makes an impact as well, doesn't he? Yeah. So it's a tough one. I wouldn't like to be in Ishmael's shoes there, if I'm honest. So it's a really, really difficult one. Do I think Mowat comes in? Oh, I'm gonna say no. I'm not sure he does, but that's just I'm just having a weird prediction there. I think Johnston will come back in, but I'm not too sure about Mowat.
Yeah, I think Johnston probably does come back in. I've been impressed with Button. I think he's done a good job, and I think he's shown. I think it's he's been really mature, really, with his performance and coming out and sweeping from the back. I think he's shown a really good reading of the game side. But obviously, Sam Johnstone, if you have him playing at his best for the final months of the season, it could be the difference between you potentially going up and not going up. So you want him to play if he can. Alex Mowat, I think that red card, as you said, was silly. He let the team down. He was, completely stupid of him to go and get himself sent off in that game. So, you kind of don't want to bring him back in for that. I don't want to hold a grudge over him, but that did kind of cost us that game really, and could have cost us picking up 3 points. So I want to see him come back in, but I thought Malumbi made a really good impact off the bench. I thought there were some really assertive tackles that helped us sort of get forward. Obviously, his high pressing, and I say high pressing, just pressing in general, is just so useful for the team. And I thought Adam Reach did really well. I thought he was everywhere, really. I thought there were so many times where Peterborough, they had Dembele up front, and they looked like they were going to get the ball to him and play the ball over the top, and we might be in a bit of trouble. But Reach, quite often, more often than not, snuffed out the danger. He was sat on the halfway line for most of their corners because they kept 2 men up quite often. So he was really nice to see him get involved. I probably wouldn't bring Mo back in. I'd probably keep either Reach or Malumbi in there, but Sam Johnson, I think, has to come back into the side because of his impact. If he does put in the performances we want to see from him. Obviously, Preston are going to be probably more difficult opposition than we give them credit for. They haven't won in 4, and they have the 4th worst away record in the league as well, coming to the Hawthorns. Obviously, it was a difficult result last time, 1-1. Probably should have lost that game, to be honest. They had so many chances, Preston, to score. Matt, how do you see this one going? It's a tough task, really.
Yeah, very much so. I definitely think we can't afford to dismiss Preston, especially under the management of Ryan Lowe. And I think since he's come in, you've got to admit they've become a better team, and the results probably do show that. It's equally not going to be the hardest game we'll play this season. I just think any Ryan Lowe team will pose a challenge. You'd like to think Albion again can assert their dominance on the game and really control proceedings. I'm trying to think, I think Emil Rees-Jacobson up front for Preston might cause danger. I think Daniel Johnson's always been a handy player. But again, you wouldn't say they're full of, stars who will cause you danger. So, it won't be an easy one, but I think you'd say Albion should win. And, we'll definitely be favourites, won't we?
Yeah, I think so. Preston obviously been, sort of a different side really under Ryan Lowe. Obviously, more ball heavy side when they can, but they maybe haven't quite got those players that they might want to play that style. So if Ismail is going to insert a high press into this game, it could be a bit of a jackpot for Albion at times if we can potentially, like Coventry, how we executed it well and against the side that wanted to play out from the back, and it could be one that we see a press implemented and potentially winning the ball back high at the pitch and could lead to lots of chances. Matt, if I had to push you, how do you think in terms of score prediction the game is going to pan out?
Oh well, I mean, any listeners of our podcast will know we are famously incorrect every time. I thought yesterday I went with 2-0. I thought, hang on, I went with it. We actually might finally, for the first time on the podcast, have a correct. Well, the only correct prediction we've had was, I think, 0-0 against Forest. Former England and Worcester batsman Ollie Westbury went with it. So on our own podcast, none of us have actually got a correct result so far. So it's unbelievable, but I'll go with a 2-0. Again, anyone that knows me knows I'll always go with an Albion win because I just like to be biased in the public domain and show my support for the team. Whereas, at home between friends, I'm a bit more pessimistic. But I'll say 2-0 Albion. Hopefully, this win against Peterborough does spark something. We can put a run of results together. As you mentioned, they said Preston won't be easy. I think they beat Stoke away from home, didn't they, recently? And that's a really good result in itself. I mean, we've seen Stoke put a challenge to Fulham on Saturday. So, it definitely won't be easy. But I'd like to think, this is the time where Albion can put a bit of pressure on the top two, and we'll see where it takes us. 2-0.
It's optimistic. I've never got a score prediction right like yourselves, to be honest, Matt. So I do sympathise and I feel your pain. I mean, it wasn't the worst thing to get wrong, because obviously if we'd have lost 2-0, you would have been upset. But 3-0, you've added an extra goal on for Albion, so it's not the end of the world. Swings and roundabouts to that one. But I'll go for another 3-0. I think I don't want to say the same. I would have maybe said 2-0, but I don't want to say the same. It's silly if we both say the same thing. So I'll go for 3-0 Albion. I think it's going to be hopefully a similar performance, but hopefully the last 15 minutes can spread throughout the game and have a similar intensity and quality throughout the game. But hopefully it's going to be a decent clash. But Matt, that's about all we've got time for on the Baggies podcast this week. A massive thank you for coming on and giving up your time to chat. And if you just want to point people in the direction of your Twitter and the WBA Report podcast and sort of where they can find it and where should they start listening if that's what they want to do.
Personally, you can find my Twitter. I'm Matt Sport with an underscore on the end. But more importantly, you can find the WBA Report podcast on all good podcast hosting platforms like yourself, I'm sure. And why not start on our sort of Christmas quiz episode with Louis if you'd like to. You can go back from the beginning, but probably having to go over all those results, it's probably a bit harrowing. So why not go from the quiz episode? You can even join in. You can maybe even find out the result of that.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't want to find out the result in this episode. We'll leave that for another day. But yeah, check out the WBA Report podcast, and obviously go and drop Matt a follow on Twitter with the links in the description. They'll be there for you guys to go and check out. And obviously, make sure you listen to the new episode that's coming out after the Preston game. But Matt, a massive thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure chatting to you on the Baggies podcast this week.
Thank you very much for having me, Louis. It's been great. Hopefully we can get a win on Wednesday then.
Fingers crossed. 3 points. Matt, you could be our lucky charm this week and hopefully pick us up 3 points against Preston. But that does bring me to the end of the Baggies podcast this week. Our 75th episode is all over and done with. Make sure you're subscribing on your podcast platforms or YouTube if you're new, and make sure you leave us a nice review or a comment with your thoughts on the show if you've enjoyed it. And that does bring me to the end of the show, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.